I am a true believer in how we think about ourselves and how we perceive ourselves seeps into everything we do. So if you consider yourself to be a failure or shit at maths, you're probably going to be, shit at maths. But if you really believe in yourself that, I'm going to be successful, then I truly believe that, you will be successful. What would I tell my younger self? And it was, it would be to believe in yourself. I didn't always have that self-belief, but I always had hard work, and I always worked my ass off. Whether it be, I used to get up at 4:45 every day, finish at 9. I did that for 3 years. You have to earn your stripes. I was always the hardest worker on the pitch, in the sessions, in the training, and I guess I kind of, made that my USP, if you like. The reason why you train, why you practice, is to know that you're able to, replicate that, in a match scenario. So once I've thrown my first pass or done my first kick, I think I just settled into it nicely.
It's been spilled forward, but Tom Bliss has emerged with. There's a chance here if they can spread it wide quickly. And Bliss has got through. Brilliant break from Tom Bliss.
You look at the most successful people in the world, and they have not led a life of balance. What they've achieved has come at a sacrifice. Don't compare yourself to someone who's already at that stage. Do your thing, work hard, and you'll get there one day.
Open Up podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, I don't know if I'm a little bit ashamed to say this, but I don't think I really understood your career as a professional rugby player. And I'm like, how is he my friend? And I actually didn't know the level to how he played. So can you give us a little bit of background in terms of like, what did your rugby career look like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess it all goes back to when I very first started. My dad took me to a local rugby club age 7, and it quickly became one of my main, if not my only hobbies, my big passion, all throughout my childhood, my school, and then obviously that transitioned into university, played for the first team there, and then managed to get a professional contract back in 2014 at London Wasps. So played there for a couple of years, and then kind of went from there, really.
So at what point, because I think when I talk to a lot of like sports people or athletes or professionals in their like sporting career, a lot of people, a common theme I'm seeing at the moment is it either naturally just happened or you've been playing for like a really long time. Was there a point, because there may not have been, where you're like, damn, I'm good at this?
I mean, I was always the big guy, right? So back when I was 12, like, it was give the ball to Blissy. And, as other people, teammates, opposition caught up, I guess I had to evolve my game a little bit. And I was always the hardest worker on the pitch, in the sessions, in the training. And I guess I kind of, made that my USP, if you like. But in terms of my belief, there wasn't a particular point where I thought, I'm the shit here. I guess it kind of just developed over time. And don't get me wrong, I had a few setbacks, a few teams I wasn't selected for. But it wasn't until I started getting a bit of exposure at Loughborough. I played for Leicester Tigers Academy, London Irish Academy, and a few A-League games, that I started to truly believe that, I'm okay at rugby. There might be some longevity here. And then obviously off the back of finishing at Loughborough, one of my university friends had graduated a year before me and was signed to an agency, and he put me in touch with a chap called Stu. So Stu, if you're watching this, shout out to you. So he approached me and helped get me my first contract.
I love that, because it sounds really similar as well. I had our GB Olympian Michelle Griffin-Robinson on, and really similar. She said, yeah, my mum took me to a track, and it was basically, I had a lot of energy, and kind of, she had a class, and it was something I could do while she would go to the class on a Sunday. So she said, I have a lot to thank mum for. And what I think's interesting is there wasn't necessarily at the time like a defining moment of like, this is my thing, this is what I'm going to do. And even Holly, when she was on this season as well, she says really similar. She said, yeah, no, I just really liked running. Like,
That's
yeah.
Cool.
And it's when you get to a point where you realise, oh, maybe actually there's something in it. But it's interesting, because even when you said, yeah, I started to like have the self-belief, you didn't say to me, oh, I'm amazing, like this could be my career. You said, yeah, okay, I'm okay. how have you, like, over the years, without giving too much away in terms of where you're at now, but particularly when you were playing rugby, how did you, and maybe you didn't do this consciously, but really build that self-belief? Because I think what I've noticed with clients and people that I talk to, when we don't have it, it sends us into such a spiral.
I think to answer your question in a roundabout way, I found it very difficult. I was in quite a pivotal position. I was scrum half, so I was the link between the forwards and the backs, a bit of a playmaker, if you like, and I found it very daunting and overwhelming starting at Wasps. There was a few injuries above me, so I quickly found myself thrust into the first team. I was on the bench. I was playing with some guys I'd looked up to for years, and as that link, I found it very, very, very daunting and very overwhelming. And I don't know if I ever truly believed in myself and my ability. Playing for them, I probably felt a lot more settled in other teams I played for. And I actually got asked this on my story the other day, what would I tell my younger self? And it was, it would be to believe in yourself. Because I think, whatever you do, it has to start within. It has to start with your own self-belief. So yeah, it's something that hasn't come easy in the past, but definitely with what I'm doing now, I've been working on it.
I love this. I'm going to delve into that. I want to take a quick diversion.
Of course.
What would you tell your future self in 10
Future
years?
self.
Yeah. Imagine the future you in 10 years' time.
I discussed this with Courtney recently, my girlfriend, and she said her response was, "Don't worry about the past or the future, just be in the present, honey," which is quite a cool response. But what would I tell my future self? That everything's going to be okay. I'm very confident in my ability for something to materialize. That doesn't necessarily mean I will rest on my laurels and I'll wait for some opportunities to come. But I'm very confident in my ability that something's going to materialize in the future.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
Yes, I'm here for it. I can't wait to watch the journey. Okay, let's go back to the self-belief.
Cool.
Because one, I love how honest you are, and I think as well it's such an important share, and especially as somebody that is quite well known, I think sometimes people can have a perception,
of course,
of you having it together, like, great, he's always performed, but actually we're not always vulnerable or privy, shall I say, to what I always say, like, what's going on inside your head, like that inner work. And hearing you say, actually at that point I'm not sure that I had that. Different now, in a different stage, a different chapter. What was it like stepping out for your first rugby game as a professional player? What was that moment like?
Tough. I mean, it was quite fortunately, it was a game that we were winning convincingly. So I came on and we were 30, 40 points up. So it wasn't a case of, I've come on to win the game or seal the deal. So it was against London Welsh in the Premiership. And I think I had 20, 25 minutes to play. And as I said, we're already 30 points up. So, the pressure, obviously I felt an unbelievable amount of pressure, making my first team debut, with some heroes of mine. But I just kind of quickly, the reason why you train, why you practice is to know that you're able to replicate that in a match scenario. So once I've thrown my first pass or done my first kick, I think I just settled into it nicely.
I love that. And you said something that just, I feel it's because every conversation at the moment is surrounded around this. I've got real themes coming out in every conversation at the moment, whether it's podcasts, whether it's clients, wherever, even with friends. And you saying this is why we practice. We practice so that when we step on, we know that we can do it. And I'm going to just throw the buzzword in there about imposter syndrome. And it's that creeps in and the self-doubt creeps in and the lack of belief. But usually it comes from a place because it's something new that we haven't done before, right? And I think part of it is being able to navigate the uncomfortableness of you have to unfortunately go through the stage of you haven't done it before.
Of course.
But the more you practice or the more you build up the evidence, you have this log in your head to say, oh, okay, wait, I can do it. And I take it back to I think by the time this episode goes live, we will be a year of the podcast.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it feels really special kind of hitting that year mark, because this time last year I was in a really different space, and forget in terms of how it's grown, just me in terms of a host. I used to feel so apprehensive. And even when my beautiful videographers today were like, are you nervous about today? And I was like, no, not I always have a bit of energy that's like, I want to make sure this is good.
Of course.
I want to ensure I do my guest justice as well. Very different when I'm on my own recording. But a different type of beautiful nerves that I can like engage with, rather than last year being like, is anyone going to listen? Is this adding value? Am I over talking? I used to listen back to the first guest episodes and I'd hear the same words I'd repeat. I'm like, oh my God, or I love that. Everyone's going to notice it now. I shouldn't have pointed it out. Or I'd be like, right, or I want to pick up on this. And it comes with that practice.
Of course,
so
of
even
course.
as you say, like, that practice was so important, but it doesn't mean that like the doubt might not have been there.
No, absolutely. And just to touch on that, you know, when someone messages you on Instagram and you can see previous DMs from like years ago, I look back at some videos of my talk to cameras and I cringe like hell. I'm like, I sound like a robot. I am off to the gym. I have had a good, and you look back and you laugh, but it's the necessary stepping stones, you know, that you have to overcome and go through to reach where you're at today. And you know, you speaking to me now, you're exuding professionalism and class, and no, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Oh, thank you. You know what? It reminded me of actually something I heard an entrepreneur say a while ago, and it's something that I really truly live by now. When you say you look back at those videos and you cringe.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and she said that if you don't look back at what you did 6 to 12 months ago and cringe, you did it wrong. Because it's exactly how it's supposed to be. And I mean, so timely you brought this up. So we're kind of rejigging website and going through that process at the moment. I'm not going to lie, very painful process because it's not my skill set. Got a beautiful person working on it.
Nice.
And I was with my photographer the other day, and originally, before I'd even launched the business, we did like this video that was going to sit on the website. And I've never seen it again. I actually don't even have it. And he played it to me, and I literally
cringed.
He laughed, and he was like, I said, why is there such a big pause? But you know what? I needed the reminder, and I needed the reminder to be like, damn, you've grown. And it's so important.
It is cool. It is
Isn't
really
it?
cool. It's really cool.
And I think I said to a client this week as well, I said, especially when you're like in comparison mode, right? We know how easy it is. We know we have the beauty of social media, which I absolutely adore. I love social media. But if we're falling into the comparison trap, it's just too easy to open up your phone and be like, gosh, I've not done this. So-and-so's got their stuff together. I haven't. And I love to say, okay, but compare yourself to where you were 12 months ago.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that kind of like shifts you out of it. So the thing that I didn't know is that you actually played for the States, right? As well as England. So what was the difference in terms of playing for the States versus playing for the UK? Playing for England, I should say.
Playing for England is obviously a lot harder. They're a much better team. But no, I was born in New York, so I did have 2 passports at the time, an American passport and a British passport. So I was able to qualify to play for the States, which was cool. So the opportunity arose, and I jumped at it. But they are a developing nation in terms of you know, rugby is not their first sport or their second or their third, but you find that a lot of athletes who haven't quite made it in football, as they call it, NFL, will pick up rugby and give it a good shot. So yeah, it was a cool time.
What was the trigger event, or what was the reason that you then transitioned, other than the fact, okay, you want to play for England and like that's the more elite team? What kind of happens to cause that to then put the wheels in motion?
A new professional league started in America, and again, my agent Stu, who I'm very grateful for, he kind of put the wheels in motion, and I was assigned to the team in San Diego. So I lived in San Diego for 7 months, which was a pretty cool experience. So I was out in the States, and that's when I got capped for the USA team.
Amazing. So, what was it like? Please, by the way, correct this if this is wrong. But also, I have to like embarrassingly admit that rugby's not my sport.
Not your thing.
Yeah, so even when you're explaining it, I'm literally learning so much with you right now. And I'm like, okay, so you get to correct whatever I say is wrong.
Course,
I'm like, oh God, he's gonna be like, no, Amira, that's not the sport. Am I right that you played for San Diego first and then England?
No.
Other way round.
Other way around.
Okay.
Oh, so in terms of my career.
Yeah.
So I was playing for Wasps first in England.
Okay.
And that was for a year and a half. And then I went to another team on loan called Ealing, not too far away from here. Didn't actually get on too well with the head coach. And then this opportunity arose in the States. I went from Wasps to Ealing to San Diego. And that's where that's when I got capped for the States when I was playing out in San Diego.
We needed that distinction. So I'm glad.
There we go. There's the clarification.
Thank you. Can we actually then delve into a little bit in terms of being at Ealing and not necessarily getting on with the head coach? How at that point in your career, because you would have been pretty young, and I don't like talking about age, but in terms of experience, how did you navigate that?
It's cool you brought that up. I guess I haven't really thought too much about it, but I'd gone from playing for the Wasps first team. Their team developed. They brought in some more experienced players in my position for the second season, so I didn't really have a place in the team in my second year, hence why I went on loan. So obviously had the heights of playing for Wasps in my first year, and I was hoping to start for Ealing. They were playing in the league below in the championship, and I just didn't get picked. I was training hard, and the head coach was favouring another 9 over me, so it was tough. I remember feeling a little bit worthless and a bit like, this is not what's supposed to happen. And I actually walked into his. I stormed into his office one day, and
I'm actually really here for that.
Yeah, and it was quite brave actually, and I politely told him to fuck off, to F off. I'm done here. So I had calls from my agent, Blissy, what the hell have you done? But I guess I kind of stayed true to myself. I wasn't happy with the situation. So that's when I stopped playing for Ealing, and then obviously kind of landed on my feet a little bit by moving out to the States in San Diego.
Okay, from my perspective, how brave and how beautiful.
Yeah, it was tough.
I feel like as well, you look back at those moments, like the younger version of you, and there is a level of, I'm not speaking for everybody, I'm going to speak for you and for me, right? That level of like fire. Sometimes I'm going to say volatility, but that fire in your belly where when something doesn't sit right with you, you're like, hey, like I'm not okay. It needs to be said,
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm all about as well channeling like, let's learn how to respond rather than react. But I also truly believe that there's a time where when something doesn't align with you, or someone has, not at that point in your life, you would have perhaps known this, but like crossed that boundary, that invisible line that you have where someone steps over it and you feel like this is not okay. That's your moment to speak up. And sometimes I think there's a time and a place, to storm in. It's okay. Like, it's so okay. And listening to that as well, I actually really smile and admire that you had that fire and that fight to say, hey, I'm not okay with this. This is not cool. And also look how it kind of like led to what came next.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess let's talk about the pivotal moments. Then that kind of ended, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
First of all, give us context in terms of what happened.
So the season in San Diego in the Pro League out there was relatively short. It was 12 games, so spread over 12 weeks. And 3 games into a 12-game season, I was knocked out cold for 2 minutes on the pitch. Having never suffered or never had a concussion before, this is my first serious one. So yeah, I was unconscious for 2 minutes on the pitch. It's all on YouTube, by the way, so you can see.
You know this because we've had this conversation. I am not going to watch it.
Yeah, it's not too gruesome, but I am very away with the fairies, and my mum, dad, and brother had actually flown over to visit me, and it was 8 or 9 minutes into the game. So they were like, "Cheers, Tom. Great to see you play." So I was carted off on one of those blood wagons, taken to the change room, and then obviously ambulance to hospital, and checked over, and then obviously was told I'd suffered a pretty nasty blow and was unconscious for quite a considerable amount of time.
Okay, I feel like this is a very good time for me to lob in. Everybody listening and everybody watching, Blissy has just gone through laser eye surgery, and I'm sitting here like so conscious about, okay, the light's too bright, are you okay?
They're perfect.
So if we pause and stuff at any moment, this is why we're going to take a little recovery break. But it's from a deep place of gratitude. And I really just admire like your level of resilience, and I bring it in now because actually to suffer such a kind of severe injury physically, let alone what it the impact it had mentally as well. So as they've said to you, right, it's really serious, you were out cold for a significant period of time, at what point was it really clear to you that this is it?
Probably not for another 3-4 months where I had another incident, but kind of, in the immediate aftermath of the first concussion. It's funny you brought up my laser eye surgery, because there are similarities in the two, sitting in a dark room. I've sat in a dark room for a day after my laser eye surgery, but it was about 4 weeks after my first concussion, because you can't take in any stimulus, whether that be your phone, whether that be reading. You just get an immediate headache. Going to the toilet, immediate headache. So that was me pretty much for 4 weeks. Beautiful sunshine outside, and I had all the curtains drawn, and I was in a dark room for 4 weeks. So not the best or most memorable time, over those 4 weeks.
How did you get through them?
As I said, my mum and dad and brother were over. Mum and dad went home, and Freddie stayed with me for the first week, which was cool. It wasn't the trip he had come over for.
Had a whole new take on it.
But I think he was drinking beers by himself on the balcony. He was very happy. Yeah, big time. But it was such a long time ago. I can't actually remember. I just remember sleeping a lot and going for walks when I could. But yeah, it wasn't the best time of my life.
And I get as well that actually me probing and asking those questions to revisit a time that doesn't sit massively well. I just really want to do that with care and just appreciate you being open to even go there with me. So getting to this stage of your career and knowing kind of right, we're not going to continue with this. What happened next in terms of your mind? What went through your brain in terms of, okay, this is what I've been doing. I've been doing it for a very long time, since I was a kid. Was it excitement? Was it fear? Was it great, I can get creative? What went through your head?
Well, I'd actually come back. I played again. So I came back when I was playing for another team in England, and I had another concussion. And the rules stipulate that if you have 2 serious concussions within a short period of time, you have to take a year off contact sport. So I remember finishing the game, and I was only knocked out cold for 4 seconds this time. So nothing compared to only 4 seconds.
I'm like, it's still a concussion.
I know. So I remember, meeting with a doctor and then calling my dad, and dad didn't know about the protocols. He was like, "Oh, it's fine, son. You'll be back again in 3 months' time." And I was like, "Nah, Dad, it's a bit more serious this time. Love you, Dad, but it's a bit more serious this time." And then I had to take a year off contact sport. And I've always had a passion for training and fitness. And reflecting on my rugby career, I probably enjoyed the conditioning based sessions and the gym based sessions probably more than sometimes actually playing. So I had just done a PT qualification on the side, because again, you hear these horror stories of people's careers ending early, and obviously it happened to me. And then I remember calling my dad, and I think it was the very next day, I applied to work at a gym, and I kind of flicked a switch. I've never been one to feel sorry about myself, and you should always try and find a solution. And that's what I did. I didn't think, right, I'm stuffed here, I can't play rugby for a year. I thought, what, I've just done this PT qualification on the side. I'm quite passionate about, training and fitness. Let's just go for that. And I think the very next day I just went boof, full steam ahead with that. So I can't remember crying or getting particularly teary, because I guess I was fortunate that I had an avenue to channel my energy down. But yeah, it was definitely a turning point for sure.
So that's interesting in terms of how you processed it at the time. And I know you massively have a really positive outlook. I think it's why I adore you and Court as well. Because together as well, I just feel like it's amplified, right? And I'm all for it. And I love to kind of sit in that space. And I love that you shifted into solution mode and was like, actually, well, what have I just done? Okay, cool. It feels like this is a shift. This is a pivotal moment in my career. As much as you don't always know that at the time, right? You're just like, okay, change is needed. And although you didn't particularly cry, was there some sort of, and there may not have been, but was there some sort of grieving, I say, for what had been and the fact that you playing professional rugby was no more? Was there any kind of acknowledgement of that?
I don't think so, no. I think again, like I've been asked, the question I always get asked is, do you miss rugby?
Okay.
And because I've managed to channel my energy into the training I do now, which is CrossFit, and that gets the competitive juices going, my answer is no, a categorical no. And sometimes I miss throwing the ball around, but I don't miss getting bashed up. I don't miss competing in that regard, because I kind of compete in a different way now, which I'm sure we'll get to. So no, I don't think I mourned the loss of my career, if you want to say that. So yeah.
It makes so much sense when you explain it like that, because even when you talked about what you loved about playing, and how much it's channeled now into your life, into your career, into like your day-to-day, what you do for as well, like hobby and your health and your wealth. For me, it makes so much sense. When you say, no, I don't miss it, I'm like, oh, it's actually such an obvious answer, because actually, even when you talked about earlier, oh, I really loved the conditioning side of it. And there were elements of it that look how beautifully you've clearly cultivated it into life now, right? But actually it feels like it wasn't necessarily about that particular sport or playing at that particular level. And the reason why I highlight it and flag it, because anybody listening, that you don't have to be a professional athlete or into sport even to listen to this, although I feel that probably a lot of people listening to this episode are, is also when it comes back to, I think, finding your purpose. And I feel like it's such a big question that people search for, and like, how can I do something that I love? And it's in the small moments. It's those really, really small moments that if you follow, I always say, like that kind of trickle in, or those little clues, and you do what brings you joy, then usually that kind of creates into something that you never even knew.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think at any point I was like, I'm going to be a coach. It naturally evolved and happened. So let's kind of fast forward to where we are today, because life looks really, really different. If I had to ask you, I'm going to really put you on the spot here, okay?
Let's do it.
Let's say, what 5 key moments in your life do you think have got you to where you are today?
5, wow.
Yeah, I'm only giving you 5. I could have given you 3 though.
I think I'll start with my upbringing. Very fortunate for the upbringing I had. Going to a good school, playing for a great club. The connections and the friendship and the family I had around me was incredible. I'm very grateful for their love and support. And then I guess number 3 would probably be the turning point in my career. Stopping playing rugby and kind of venturing down this this route that I'm currently on. And then having finished playing rugby and starting out in the fitness industry, I was very lost. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I've always been very lucky with mentors, coaches, my rugby career. And then I had this crazy Brazilian chap with a moustache called Gustavo come up to me in the gym. I was competing at Gymbox at the time, and he said, "Monster." He calls me Monster. He's like, "Monster, come train with me." So all of a sudden my eyes were open to this world of CrossFit. So I'm always very, very grateful and indebted to Gus and his love and support over the years, and he very much gave me an opportunity to grow. And then I guess lastly, obviously, meeting my girlfriend Courtney, it's been a very pivotal moment in what we're currently doing. Yeah, I think that's 5.
You know what? I did feel that you and Court meeting would probably feature on that 5. And I was like, I'm not going to
save this the last.
And also, I guess that's probably the only chapter I know of your journey.
Of course.
Right? And also, only know it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Don't really know it.
Do you remember when we first met?
Oh, I'm going to cringe. Okay, go on, tell the story.
It was your bro's track life.
Yeah.
And I'd rocked up. It was, I guess, winter, freezing cold, wrapped up, and I'm warming up, and this girl comes up to me and goes, "Oi, you're Tom, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, what do you want with my friend Courtney? what do you want with her? So I kind of just said, a bit about me, and that I quite liked your friend, and that was our first interaction.
I thank you for giving the light version, because I remember.
It was an interrogation, really, wasn't it?
I'm like, oh, Blissy, I'm so sorry.
You're very protective of your
Yes.
parents. So.
I like to say that, I probably channel that a little differently now.
Of course, yeah.
I've grown. And it's so funny because I definitely remember, obviously, that chapter in Courtney's life and the excitement she had. And it was literally like protective friend mode. And bear in mind, I'm 5'2", so I'm pretty short compared to you, Blissy. And you are big, right? And I do remember. And you honestly handled it with so much grace and love. So we can laugh about it now. So
Of course,
thank you.
of course.
So one other thing I kind of wanted to go back to that I think is important to highlight, actually, people that I speak to that I think on the podcast that sit here, one thing that really stands out is the support and the mentorship. And the reason I highlight it is because my beautiful community tend to be overachievers. And sometimes I think we have the notion and the belief that like we have to do it all by ourselves. But actually, one really common thread is the way you just express gratitude for the people and support that you have in your life, whether it's been family, whether it's like your brother keeping you company while you're at a really low point, or whether it's been Gus to help you level up and upskill in your career, which I personally think you do an absolutely bloody amazing job at.
Thank you.
Right? So I just really wanted to highlight the support, because if you feel like alone or you feel like you're trying to do it all by yourself, it's probably a really good sign that actually you could do with a bit of support. And I want to give you my opinion and then you share yours. I usually find that like your mentors or your support people, if they're not in your family, tend to kind of just come into your life at the exact right moment. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's an accurate reflection of, Gus coming into my life at the perfect time. I guess we're working with two mentors, Jake and Jack at the moment, and I guess they came into our life at a pretty good time as well. So I have to agree.
I love that. So 2 questions I want to ask. I'm like, where do I want to go first with it? You are co-founder of an absolutely amazing platform, and I'm going to get you to share that in a little bit more detail in a minute. But I look at you from the outside, from a career perspective, as an expert within the industry.
Thank you.
And you're signed to Under Armour.
I am,
right? Okay.
still.
Factually checked, just make sure. What did you do to get to a place where perhaps I view you or other people view you as somebody that's credible, that's an expert at what you do? Like, what did that journey look like?
I think touch on the characteristics of that journey. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and as I said earlier on in the pod, I didn't always have that self-belief. But I always had hard work, and I always worked my ass off. Whether it be, I used to get up at 4:45 every day, finish at 9. I did that for 3 years. You have to earn your stripes. In this fitness career, and there was a crazy conveyor belt of PTs at the gym I was working at. People coming and going, and not being able to keep up with the pace that you needed to thrive. So a lot of what where I'm at today was built off of hard work, for sure.
So you're speaking to somebody that's like, hell yeah, hard work. And I'm gonna break it down because I think I definitely try and give context to everything that we talk about, which sometimes is a bit hard because you'll be here all day trying to explain the nuance around everything. But I can't get away from agreeing with you around the level of hard work and effort. And because in today's world, I think that sometimes we can look at somebody, wherever you're looking at them, doesn't matter, and you see like how well they're doing and you question like, why aren't I there yet? But we forget the amount of work, the amount of effort, the amount of time that it takes to really hone your craft and to develop that skill. And I think as well, I've had it in a different way, and perhaps coaches will ask me like why something's going well or how I'm doing it. But also I have like a career behind me of 12 years that it set me up, like it gave me such a deep foundation. I remember as well when I was like working with Colt, like I used to do a 70-hour week without blinking. Like it was normal. So even when you're like, I was up at 4:45, I was like, yeah, I remember those days. And, I mean, even this week I've been up way earlier than I would choose to be. And I'm like, one day it's going to be a thing of the past. Yeah. But it is actually not getting away from hard work and where it gets you. The other side of it, I always say, is that I'm striving, right? We're far from it, but to cultivate a life where there's a little bit more ease in it.
Of course,
but
of
we're
course,
not there yet.
of course. I'm still working hard, and obviously, thank you very much for your kind words. But no, we're still very much working hard on a day-to-day, week to week basis, albeit in a very, very slightly different manner.
Oh, I'm so there with you. So tell us a little bit more, first of all, in your words, because I think you'll do it justice rather than me doing it on your behalf. Before I even get into like what life's like now, tell us a little bit more about the platform.
So my girlfriend and I, Courtney, created an online fitness coaching and programming business called The Ultimate You. Very much stemmed from coaching classes in lockdown and giving people a bit of a focus to their day, when a bit of structure when our life was very unstructured, and we were coaching nine or 10 live classes a week together, every single rep, every single set, which was tiring. And then kind of as lockdown and COVID eased, we developed a program that people can access if they go to the gym. So we have a monthly group program, and then we've recently developed our bespoke programming and coaching service as well.
I think that you guys are a powerhouse. I have so much admiration for both of you.
Thank you.
Especially because also, this is my opinion, so you get to like disagree with it, be like, no, Amira, that's not how I feel. But just from my perspective, I love the way that you guys have come together, both work and relationship. But if I look at both of you and how I viewed you both or value you both, is I view you both as like really credible people within the industry. And so when that combines as well, I'm thinking, oh yes, I'm here for the powerhouse.
Love that.
So what does life look like now? No. You know what? Let's come back to that, because there's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Going back to lockdown, I remember this very distinctly. And I remember those workouts being a core part of my day.
Right.
Obviously, like kind of things change naturally in terms of like there being a lockdown, there not being a lockdown. And then you guys getting to the point to say, hey, we could do something more. I mean, they're my words. So at what point were you like, right, we're going to not do the lives, or not even that, but let's turn this into something more or something different? How did that conversation come about?
Again, I think it was just a bit of an evolving process. When the gyms were shut and we couldn't do our face-to-face PT sessions, I guess it's a bit like, when I stopped playing rugby and I entered the industry, we're like, right, what can we do? So I think we taught 2 or 3 weeks of live classes, and then we created a platform for people to kind of sign up and join. And then, I guess it was just, when those stopped, we were like, right, what can we do next? And that was, creating continuing what we'd already created with our community, and I guess serving them in a different way. There was demand for a program. Every Tom, Dick and Harry's doing one now. They're not always credible. There are some very, very good programs and coaches out there. So that's kind of where it started, really, and we're hoping to continue to grow along into the future.
How innovative and creative would you say you both are?
I like to think I'm quite creative with the marketing, and we've had a bit of help recently, but I like to think I like to think we're both relatively creative. Courtney's definitely the one who's far more organized than me. She's definitely the planner and the organizer. But I think we both bring a lot to the table in terms of creative juices and whatnot.
So I don't know if this is because I haven't been on the gram lately in terms of looking at your page. When was the last time you guys did a reel together, in terms of, because the branded comical ones hit my soul on a whole different level.
We've done some good ones.
Yeah, have I been missing out?
I mean, I dressed in a pair of bra and knickers in lockdown, Courtney's bra and knickers.
Yeah, see, that one I remember distinctly.
That was magical. I
think I actually watched it the other day, I'm not even going to lie. And there's been, I feel like I remember the one distinctively. I don't know if this was for a grenade, so correct it if it's the wrong brand.
I think so, yeah.
Where you chucked water on Courtney.
Yeah, that was one of their various marketing ploys. I can't remember the tagline, but it was in the peak of summer and involved me throwing water all over Courtney. That was quite amusing. Yeah,
I definitely vouch that you guys are really creative. So even you picking out and saying Courtney's the one that has the skill where organisation is stronger, what do you think makes you guys work well together?
Good question. I think we're both very similar and very different in our own rights. Obviously, what you just mentioned there. I think we share a passion to help others. That's eventually what it boils down to. I'm sure that that's how you feel as well. And we're very passionate about training in a correct way, and people not viewing fitness as something that you have to do. Fitness is something that you should enjoy and benefit from. And I guess people's past experiences of going to the gym or a class that they might not potentially might tarnish their relationship with fitness. So hopefully with our style of training and in our community, we can kind of help correct that.
I love that. What are the strengths that you think you have that Courtney doesn't, in terms of when it comes to running the business?
Staying calm. She is calm.
We were talking about this, right?
Yeah. I'm calm.
Yeah.
I'm calm. If the house is on fire, is what it is. It's funny because we always laugh. I get very flustered by the small things like, I can't find the milk or the cereal. And whereas if we were late for a flight or we missed the flight, it doesn't bother me. Like it's the big things, is what it is. But I get really flustered by the small things. And Courtney's the opposite. So she'll get really flustered by being late or missing a flight, and she'll be pretty calm on those things. But on the whole, I'm definitely the calmer of the two.
I love that. Definitely complement each other.
Yeah.
So I guess taking that a little bit further, right? Because you live together, are together in a romantic relationship, and on top of that, you've got a business relationship. How do you make that work?
It's tough. It's tough. I think we've always respected our boundaries. Going back to kind of our personality traits, we're different in the fact that I love spending time by myself and Courtney doesn't. So she's very happy to be with me every single day. Whereas, I say to her, look, Courts, I'm going to go to this gym today. I need to go work in this coffee shop by myself. And then when we link again at 5 o'clock, say, hey, it's nice to see you.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what we miss from a typical relationship where you both go your separate ways and then you come back in the evening for dinner or whatnot. But we're never, if we're spent all day with each other and then we're going out for dinner in the evening, it's never forced. We try not to talk about work, but yeah, I think going back to your initial question, definitely boundaries and being aware of one's own space. Even living with each other, I might be watching my rugby on the TV in the living room, and then Courtney might be doing her own thing in the second bedroom. So yeah, we're very respectful.
I really, really relate to that, particularly when you say, like, if we say a typical relationship, the two people work and whatever, even if one person's working from home, it's the fact that one person's home, one person isn't. And there is that coming back together at the end of the day. And I think for me, now, like, that point just really stood out because when I met my boyfriend, I had a corporate job. And I used to work a good 12 to 15 hours outside of the house. And I used to love it. I used to come home and dinner was cooked for me. He was great, right? And his life looked really differently as well. And he was very much ad hoc, in and out of the house. And it was just different. It was just different. It isn't necessarily that one's better than more than the other. But you're right in terms of we've had to look at things differently to say, okay, well, how are we appreciating each other if we have spent all day together? And where is this is definitely me. This is a me thing I've had to learn. But when you say that you've got the boundary of that, when you guys are going out for dinner, or there's your like switch off time, it's not about work. And I think definitely from my thing, I'm going to own this, okay? I've had the thing of, that's my person. That's the person I'm with. Sometimes as well in the past, he's seen too much and heard too much in terms of like, I work at home, okay? And that actually, I don't think anybody needs to see and hear it all, especially when you have the romantic relationship, because there's something otherwise that gets lost. And I think there isn't that appreciation, and not because you don't care, it's just the situation doesn't lend itself to it. And it's actually how you consciously trying to shift that. So I definitely relate to it, but probably more because I've had to actively strip back and also think about, all right, well, where are my business mentors, or where are my people that are supporting me that isn't my partner? And I think part of it comes back to as well, like, your partner can't be everything to you. It just isn't healthy.
I agree. Yeah, and it's look, we're not perfect, and we're we're constantly trying to work on it, and sometimes we'll there's always a playoff. There's always a playoff between different an easy one is work, health and play, and obviously you chuck in your relationship there. It's it's quite hard to fit everything in. Sometimes that needle will move from one to the other, but sometimes we'll check ourselves to be like, actually, we haven't had a date night, we haven't gone out for dinner because all of you are doing is like working and training, and then we'll try and move that needle back towards the relationship. So it's you need to have an awareness of where that needle is at.
I love that you've described it like that, because sometimes I feel that, I'm really against the word balance, but the reason why I feel like I have to really justify and explain that is because you described it in the most beautiful way. It's the needle moving, and it's keeping that in check. It's not trying to keep the needle at the same.
Balance doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And again, there's always a sacrifice to whatever you do. And you look at the most successful people, again, whatever is how you define success, but you look at the most successful people in the world, and they have not led a life of balance. What they've achieved has come at a sacrifice. And again, you're going back to what we spoke about earlier, and looking at them and their success and the tip of the iceberg stuff, but what cost has it come at? And I guess it just comes back to balance, this thing that we try and reach. I don't think it's something we should necessarily try and aim for. I prefer to move the needle between certain different situations,
right? And it also gives permission and allowance for life to have different priorities at different chapters, i.e. if there's a big launch going on in the business, okay, then we are aware that probably our relationship isn't going to be a priority. But as long as it's for a limited period of time,
exactly,
that priority can shift as a lower one after the launch, as an example.
And that comes down to planning. And I guess going back to what you do, communicating as well.
Thank you for that. Segue in. So I really guess I want to ask you around you running a business now. And in terms of having the platform together, but really focusing on you, what's been some of your challenges as a business owner?
Understanding that running a business for us is probably about 15% coaching, and the rest of it is stuff you have to learn on the fly. And it's hard because you've got to be a content creator, you've got to be you've got to be on top of your accounts, in your tax, and there's so many different elements that go into running a business. So I guess I've probably found that the most challenging. My coaching, my passion is coaching, and in an ideal situation, hopefully down the line we can outsource all those other bits and pieces to various other people, just so you can be completely streamlined with what you're doing. And I think that's ultimately the position you want to get to, doing what you're good at. So I guess that's been the biggest work on is understanding all the different elements that go into creating a business.
Definitely. That resonates on a really cool level. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, Blissy, you're talking to me.
Come on.
But also beautiful when you say my passion is coaching, and at the moment being aware of, and I think it's totally fair. Running a business in the early stages, there is a level of you have to do it all, right? And I think it's also beautiful because when you get to the point of delegation, you also understand how you want to delegate because you had to learn it, right? And I think that you get to have a lot more of a say. Regarding as well, one thing I just want to kind of add in for anybody listening as well, when you say 15% roughly is around your passion, which is coaching, and probably what you're really exceptional at, okay? I want to talk about your zone of genius, okay? So this is been a concept developed by Gay Hendricks, and he's written the book The Big Leap, and he talks about your 4 zones. And so you've got your zone of incompetency, which is the stuff that you can't do. You've got your zones of competency, which is the things you can do, but somebody else is going to do it better. Then you've got your zone of excellence, which is where most of us spend our time, but we don't want to. And then you have your zone of genius.
Interesting.
And your zone of genius is really where you want to spend 90% of the time. And it is your thing that is the thing that lights you up, the thing that you're exceptional at. And usually, I'm not going to give the whole entire book away, as in one, I probably can't paraphrase it in one sentence, but the idea of it is that your zone of genius usually comes from the smallest of moments. And so as much as I would say, mine's coaching as well, different type of coaching, I would also say that it's being able to pinpoint how somebody feels very, very quickly and kind of bring it to the surface in a way that they've either been reluctant to or perhaps didn't quite know where it was pinpointing. So I think I just wanted to kind of share that and add that in because you're so aware of it. And I also think it's kind of necessity at the stage of where that business is at to do it all. But also you're really aware of your zone of genius.
That's cool.
And striving towards doing that most of the time.
I think it's frustrating at times where you know deep down that what you're doing is not. It's a necessity. You know, you have to do certain things that again don't light your fire, don't fill you with passion. But I guess that's all part and parcel of it, really. And I guess, you know, again, you just have to be as efficient with those non-meaningful tasks as possible to obviously, you know, get to that point of point of genius. You said, zone of genius. Yeah.
What would you, now looking back in terms of where you're at in the business now? What would you, and I normally don't look backwards because I love to look forward, but I do think it's a really important kind of reflection point. What would you tell the version of you starting that business at that point that perhaps you think would have been really helpful to know?
What would I have told? 2 years ago or back when I first started PTing?
No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago. Don't compare yourself to others because your journey is very different to someone who started, you know, X amount of years ago. I think it's again one of the biggest downsides of social media is the comparison that I find myself doing from time to time occasionally. Courtney's, I think females are much more susceptible in the nicest way possible to comparing themselves to others as opposed to males, blokes. So I guess, you know, I would tell my earlier self, you know, don't compare yourself to someone who's already at that stage. You know, again, just, you know, do your thing, work hard, and you'll get there one day.
I love that. And I think it's a really fair point in terms of the gender split. If we're just going to generalize here, I have to like make sure, like, guys, generalization, okay, it's not a definitive and applies to everybody. But also as well, when we look at kind of conditioning as well and take it back to a time period where females didn't work, right? And men typically were breadwinners. Like that was at some point a normal household. So actually, I think understanding as well from a female's point of view, I just think it's a really good point to raise of the conditioning, and also to take it back to media as well, and like how women look, and women have tended to be historically like pitched against each other. And it doesn't mean there aren't challenges for men. I just think they're different. Of
course.
And it's also heightened. However, having said that, I ran a session recently on imposter syndrome, and there was more men in the room than women. So
interesting.
Very interesting.
Love that.
So what is the vision for the platform and the ultimate?
The ultimate you, the vision. I mean, our goal is to be the number one functional fitness platform program out there. There are some very successful ones. There's a lot of platforms and programs that have gone heavily down the CrossFit route and that style of training. Just to clarify, CrossFit's a brand that sits within functional fitness. So functional fitness is simply a combination of lifting, gymnastics, and various conditioning elements. So I guess our goal is to continue to grow that to become the number one functional fitness program out there, and just to be a really, you know, notable, notorious brand for its community and doing things the right way.
I love this. And I'm glad you explained as well about CrossFit, because I realised that people get confused. Yeah, and also I think I know about it probably because of you guys, right? And I see you compete and I see what it means to you as well. So I think it's a beautiful, beautiful distinction. I'm here for it being number one. What do you think makes it unique?
I think it, you know, without community and you know, the people that are on your program, I don't think you have a brand or a platform. So a lot of our time and energy goes into supporting, feeding back, really bigging our community up. I think a lot of platforms out there some are borderline narcissist and a little bit about them, and you know, we very much, you know, we want to get our educational content across. We obviously, you know, post videos of us training, but we want to make our platform very much about the people on it. So I guess that's our USP, is, you know, community at the heart of it.
I love that, because probably like a few months ago now, I was listening to Stephen Bartlett interview CEO of Soho House. And
great pod, by the way. Great pod.
It is. I knew you'd listen to
Yeah,
it.
of course.
I haven't even asked you. I was like, I know Blissy's listened to this episode. And Stephen Bartlett, I feel, was like massively in awe of like this brand that he's built. And he was so humble. But what I love, which I think really resonates with your USP as well, is he didn't see it that way. And Stephen Bartlett massively is coming from that branding expertise and that background, right? So he's going to see it from that marketing perspective. So he's really driving this point home. And listening to the response, he said, well, I just listened. I listened to my members. And as long as they were happy and they knew what they wanted next, and I responded to that. And for me, he really, I think the message I massively took away from it is how much he put his customers / his members at the heart of what he does and still does, and how he still grows that brand. And that his vision wasn't, I want to have a global brand, and there's no harm in it. Like, I'm massively ambitious, so I'm not dissing that or negating that at all. But the core was like, how do I serve? And I think when you come from a place of how do I serve, like, it can only grow. Absolutely.
I think you can have all the bells and whistles, you know, the flashy Instagram account and you know, and all that jazz. But if you don't have the community enjoying their training, then you don't have a brand, as far as I'm concerned.
Hell yeah. So before we round up this episode, I love to kind of bring it in with 3 questions.
Cool.
Either to kind of summarize, recap a little bit. You might want to bring something new in. You have free flow, okay? So first question is, what is either a quote that you want to share that you love, or a piece of kind of food for thought that you want to really leave our listeners with?
It's a quote actually I read in a book a while ago, which is called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. It makes me sound far more intelligent than I am. But one of the key findings from this book is that we act according to the image we create for ourselves. So it's all to do with perception. And I'm not sure if I necessarily believe in manifestation, but I am a true believer in how we think about ourselves and how we perceive ourselves seeps into everything we do. So if you consider yourself to be a failure or shit at maths, you're probably going to be, you know, shit at maths. But if you you know, really believe in yourself that, you know, I'm going to be successful, then I truly believe that, you know, you will be successful. There was a stage when I convinced myself that I was really jammy, that I was getting all these social media gigs, and there was, you know, 3 or 4 in a row when I was getting some good, and I truly believe it's because I believed in it. So I think that's quite a nice, you know, meaningful quote that I believe in.
I love the quote. Normally I don't ad lib at this stage of the episode, okay, but I have to. I'm sorry, I did not know that you said that you are like, I'm not a believer. I'm not necessarily a believer of manifesting. Blissy, what? We need to have a chat. What? I'm only finding this out now. Okay, we're going to delve into that totally separately. But also I do think, in terms of even what you described, is essentially like a form of manifesting. It is, yeah. It is, yeah. I think maybe we just have to redefine your definition of manifesting. Potentially. Right? Maybe I do believe in it. Who knows? You creating your reality. That's it. You do it from a place of your subconscious. You do. I'm trying to convince you. Okay, so second question. What would be your practical tip that you want to leave our listeners with? Good question. I'm big into my journaling, and I feel like I can't go about my day-to-day in an effective manner if I haven't physically written down some points or you know, planned out my day. So I think if you're not you know, if you're not journaling, if you're not planning out your day and writing down a few bits and bobs, I think you're pissing in the wind, so to speak. I love that. It is such a powerful tool. It is. Thank you. And I feel like, you know, some people view journaling as this like really overwhelming thing. You don't necessarily have to practice gratitude or write quotes. You can literally just say, right, this is what I'm doing tomorrow. This is what 3 things I want to achieve, and then that's good. beautiful because you actually have just literally given somebody that might feel lost in terms of where to start. It's a beautiful way to, hey, I can go and do this tomorrow.
Done. Easy.
Thank you, Blissy.
Pleasure.
Okay, last but not least, what is a resource that you want to leave us with? Because I say book, podcast, any type of resource.
Of ours or...
Anything that you think is going to be beneficial for our listeners. It can be yours. It can be something that's had an impact on you.
I mean, we mentioned Stephen earlier, but I think, you know, from a modern day resource, you can't look, you know, overlook a good quality podcast. You know, his Diary of a CEO podcast, fantastic. I recently listened to Tyson Fury on the High Performance podcast as well, and his, you know, even if you're not a boxing fan or not, his insight into his life is phenomenal. He has two personas. He has Tyson Fury and he has the Gypsy King, and he's able to flip between the two, and it's a fascinating, slightly worrying insight. And Jake Humphrey, the interviewee, was very worried for his future self in terms of, you know, his mindset. But I think that all the information on the High Performance podcast is phenomenal, as well as the Diary of a CEO. So those would definitely be my recommendations.
I love that. Blissy, the biggest thank you for today.
My absolute pleasure.
Particularly with the bright lights and laser. I'm gonna feel
sunglasses on standby.
Yes.
It's all good.
Honestly, thank you.
Pleasure.